My name is Sarah Miller, and I am 32 years old. All my life, I lived in the shadow of my golden child sister. No matter what I did, I was never good enough for my parents. Everything changed on my wedding day, when I finally stood up for myself. Years of discrimination and favoritism led to that moment of sweet revenge. But the journey there broke my heart many times. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you know what it feels like to be compared to a sibling your whole life. Now let me take you through my story. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Philadelphia, in a blue colonial house with white trim that my parents were so proud of. Our family photos lined the staircase wall, but something always struck me as odd, even as a young child. There were dozens of pictures of my sister Jessica, who was 10 years older than me, and only a handful that included me. This was my first memory of noticing the difference in how we were treated. Jessica was the perfect daughter in my parents' eyes. She excelled at everything she touched. Straight A student captain of the debate team, first chair violin, and community volunteer, with a dazzling smile that charmed everyone around her. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor Miller, beamed with pride whenever they talked about her accomplishments, which was constantly. "Your sister got another scholarship offer," my dad would announce at dinner. "Harvard is interested in her now, too." Meanwhile, my report card with all A's, except for one B+ in science, was met with, "You should ask Jessica for help with that science. She never got anything less than an A." I remember my 8th birthday party vividly. Mom had reluctantly agreed to host a small gathering with 5 friends from school. We were halfway through singing Happy Birthday when the mail arrived with a thick envelope from Yale. Jessica had been accepted with a partial scholarship. My cake sat forgotten as my parents called relatives neighbors, anyone who would listen about the amazing news. My friends awkwardly ate their slices while I fought back tears. No one even remembered to take pictures of me blowing out my candles. "We can celebrate your birthday tomorrow, sweetie," Mom said distractedly, as she helped Jessica compose thank you emails to her high school teachers, who had written recommendation letters. I tried everything to get their attention. I joined the art club and won a citywide competition in 4th grade. My drawing was displayed at City Hall, but my parents sent me with our neighbor, Mrs. Patel, because they were attending one of Jessica's college events that weekend. I still remember Mrs. Patel putting her hand on my shoulder and saying, "Your artwork is beautiful, Sarah. You should be proud." I was proud, but I also felt hollow inside. When I was 11, my grandmother came to stay with us for a month after her hip surgery. She was the first person who seemed to notice what was happening. "Eleanor," I overheard her saying to my mother one evening, "when was the last time you put one of Sarah's achievements on the fridge? Jessica has been out of the house for years, and her high school awards are still displayed while Sarah's are nowhere to be seen." "Mom, please. Jessica has exceptional accomplishments. Sarah is doing fine, but she doesn't push herself the way Jessica did." My grandmother found me later curled up with a book in the window seat of our living room. "You know," she said softly, "some flowers bloom early and everyone notices their beauty. But the late bloomers often have the most spectacular colors. You're going to surprise them all someday." Those words kept me going through many dark days. Our house itself seemed designed to reinforce the hierarchy. Jessica had the largest bedroom with the bay window even after she left for college. My room was the smallest, originally designed as an office with no closet and barely enough space for a twin bed and dresser. The walls of our home showcased Jessica's achievements: debate trophies, academic certificates, and newspaper clippings about her community service filled the living room shelves. I used to stand in front of those shelves sometimes wondering what it would take for something of mine to earn a place there. There was a science fair ribbon I won in 5th grade that made it onto the refrigerator for a week before being replaced by an invitation to Jessica's college honors dinner. Throughout elementary school, I studied hard and brought home excellent grades, joined clubs, and tried to be the perfect daughter just like Jessica. But it never seemed to matter. The pattern was established early. Jessica was the star, and I was just orbiting in her galaxy, never shining quite bright enough to be noticed on my own. High school should have been my fresh start. Jessica had graduated from Yale by then and moved back home temporarily, while job hunting in her field of international relations. I entered freshman year with determination to carve out my own identity to finally make my parents see me. Sarah Miller, the principal, called at orientation. Following in your sister's footsteps, I see. Jessica was one of our most outstanding students ever. Before I even had a chance to make my own impression, I was defined by her legacy. Teachers who had taught Jessica a decade earlier would look at me with anticipation that quickly turned to poorly disguised disappointment when I didn't quite measure up to her brilliance. The worst part came 3 months into my freshman year. I came home from school one Friday to find my bedroom completely transformed. My posters were gone. My desk was replaced with a larger, more professional one, and my twin bed was nowhere to be seen. "Surprise," my mother said, gesturing to the room. "Jessica needs a proper home office for her job applications and interviews. Your father set up a pull-out couch in the basement for you. It's just temporary until Jessica finds a position." Temporary turned out to be 7 months. 7 months of sleeping in our damp, partially finished basement on a lumpy pull-out couch. 7 months of having to keep all my clothes in storage bins because there was no dresser. 7 months of doing homework on the washing machine because there was no desk. When I complained, my father said, "This is an important time in Jessica's life. She needs our support. Don't be selfish, Sarah." During those months, I threw myself into my studies and discovered a talent for art. Mrs. Garcia, my art teacher, was the first person at school who didn't immediately compare me to Jessica. "You have a unique perspective," she told me after seeing my first portfolio. "Your use of negative space is quite sophisticated." For the first time, I felt seen for myself. I spent hours in the art studio after school developing my skills and finding my voice through painting. When the school district announced an art competition with the winner's work being displayed at the local museum, I worked on my submission for weeks. The day of the announcement, I was called to the principal's office. "Congratulations, Sarah," he said, handing me a certificate. "Your piece won first place. The award ceremony is this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Westfield Museum of Art." I rushed home bursting with excitement. This was my moment. Finally, something that was all mine, not in Jessica's shadow. "Mom, Dad, I won the district art competition. My painting will be displayed at the museum. The ceremony is Saturday at 2. My mother glanced up from helping Jessica prepare for an interview. "This Saturday, oh honey, that's when we're helping Jessica prepare for her United Nations internship interview. It's a huge opportunity." "But this is my first major award," I said, my voice cracking. "Couldn't one of you come?" My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Sarah, this UN opportunity could shape your sister's entire career. I'm sure your art teacher will take pictures." I went to the ceremony alone. Mrs. Garcia noticed my parents' absence and sat beside me, clapping loudly when my name was called. Later, she helped me hang my painting and took several photos for your portfolio. I knew she was being kind, taking photos for the parents who should have been there. That was also the year I met James, my first serious boyfriend. He came to dinner at our house once and afterward texted me, "Is it always like that with your family?" But like what? I replied, "Your parents asked Jessica like 50 questions about her day and barely spoke to you. And when you tried to tell them about your art award, your dad changed the subject back to Jessica's job prospects." It was validating to have someone else notice, but also deeply embarrassing. I started avoiding bringing friends home, creating excuses for why we couldn't hang out at my house. The basement bedroom situation wasn't exactly something I wanted people to see anyway. The Christmas of my sophomore year was when the disparity became impossible to ignore. Jessica received a new laptop for her job search, designer clothes for interviews, and a check toward a future apartment deposit. I received a sketch pad, some colored pencils, and a gift card to a local clothing store with just enough value to buy maybe 2 shirts. That night alone in my basement bedroom, I cried myself to sleep. The sadness was evolving into something else, though. A slow, burning resentment was taking root, along with a determination that someday they would regret making me feel so worthless. The pattern continued throughout high school. Any achievement of mine was measured against Jessica's and found wanting. My SAT scores were good, but not as impressive as your sister's. My acceptance to several good colleges was met with not Ivy League, but still decent options. Even my scholarship offers were described as helpful since they're not as substantial as what Jessica received. By the time I graduated high school, the anxiety and depression I'd been fighting had become my constant companions. I developed physical symptoms of stress, including insomnia and tension headaches. The only bright spots were my art, the recognition I received from teachers and peers for my work, and my growing determination to escape the toxic family dynamic that was slowly crushing my spirit. College selection was my first real act of independence. I chose Northern State University in Michigan, a 16-hour drive from Philadelphia. It wasn't Harvard or Yale like Jessica, but it had an excellent graphic design program, and more importantly, it was far from home. Northern State, I've never even heard of it, my mother said when I announced my decision. Are you sure you don't want to consider Penn State? It's much more prestigious. I got a partial scholarship to Northern, I explained, and their design program is ranked in the top 15 nationally. My father frowned. We're already helping Jessica with her graduate school at Columbia. College is expensive, Sarah. You know we don't have unlimited funds. That was when I learned that despite years of my parents talking about your college fund, most of the money had already been spent on Jessica's undergraduate and graduate education. I would receive minimal financial support, while Jessica's Columbia graduate program was being fully funded by our parents. The summer before college was spent working 2 jobs to save money. I waited tables at a local diner in the mornings and worked retail at the mall in the evenings. Meanwhile, Jessica was preparing for graduate school, with a focused summer at home, meaning she wasn't working, but was concentrating on her academic preparation. When August came, my parents were too busy helping Jessica move into her New York apartment to drive me to Michigan. I took a bus with 2 suitcases and arrived alone at my dormitory, watching other students being dropped off by emotional parents. The distance turned out to be healing. For the first time, I could define myself on my own terms. No one at Northern State knew Jessica or expected me to be like her. I found a work-study position in the art department and took out student loans to cover what my scholarships didn't. I made friends who knew me only as Sarah, not as Jessica's little sister. My roommate Katie was from Seattle and quickly became my closest friend. After hearing snippets of my family situation over the first semester, she invited me home with her for Thanksgiving. My parents would love to meet you, she said, and honestly, it sounds like you could use a break from your family. The Thompsons' home was nothing like mine. Katie's parents asked both of us about our classes, seeming genuinely interested in our answers. They displayed both Katie's artwork and her brother's sports trophies with equal pride. No one was the star child. Both were valued for their unique strengths. You're welcome here any time, Mrs. Thompson told me as I was leaving. Katie speaks so highly of you and your amazing artwork. It was my first glimpse of what a healthy family dynamic looked like, and it was eye-opening. I began to understand that the problem wasn't me, it was my family's dysfunction. During my sophomore year, I started seeing a campus therapist. Dr. Lisa Matthews was the one who introduced me to the concept of the golden child syndrome. It's a family dynamic where parents lavish praise, attention, and resources on one child at the expense of others, she explained. The golden child isn't necessarily at fault, but the pattern creates lasting damage for the overlooked siblings. Having a name for what I had experienced was validating. I wasn't crazy or overly sensitive. The discrimination had been real, and its effects on my self-worth were significant. With Dr. Matthews' help, I began developing healthier boundaries with my family. I limited my visits home to major holidays and kept phone calls brief and informative rather than emotional. When I did go home, I stayed with my grandmother when possible to minimize the stress of being in my parents' house. Jessica got engaged during my junior year of college. My parents immediately committed $30,000 to her wedding budget and spent months helping her plan every detail. When I called to share that I had been selected for a prestigious summer internship at a Chicago design firm, my mother listened for 30 seconds before saying, "That's nice, dear. Did you get the photos of wedding venues I sent Jessica? Really wants your opinion." The internship changed my life. The creative director at the firm took me under her wing and became a mentor. "You have exceptional talent," Angela told me. Your portfolio already shows a distinctive style that many designers take years to develop. For once, I was being judged on my own merits, not in comparison to anyone else. The confidence I gained was transformative. The final breaking point with my family came during winter break of my senior year. I was home for Christmas, helping my mother in the kitchen, while my father and Jessica discussed her upcoming wedding in the living room. "We've decided to surprise Jessica with a honeymoon to Italy," my father announced proudly. 2 weeks touring Rome, Florence, and Venice. I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. They had told me repeatedly there was no money to help with my student loans. Yet they could afford an Italian honeymoon for Jessica. "What about my graduation in May?" I asked. "Will you be able to come? It's the weekend before Jessica's wedding." My mother looked uncomfortable. "Oh, honey, that's going to be so difficult with the wedding that same month. All the last-minute preparations." "My graduation is a one-time event," I said, my voice shaking. "I've worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. I've earned this without much help from either of you." My father walked into the kitchen, frowning. "Sarah, don't make this about you. Your sister is only going to get married once. Graduations happen every year." "Not my graduation," I said, finally finding my voice. "I won't be graduating again. But you're right about one thing, this isn't about me. It never has been." I left the next morning, cutting my holiday visit short. On the long bus ride back to Michigan, I made a decision. I would build a life where I was valued. If my parents couldn't see my worth, I would find people who could. I graduated with honors that May. My parents didn't attend. They sent a card with a $50 check inside. The Thompsons came instead, along with my grandmother, who made the trip despite her health issues. Angela, my internship mentor, also attended and offered me a full-time position at her firm in Chicago. "Your talent is undeniable," she said. "We'd be lucky to have you on our team." I accepted on the spot, ready to begin the next chapter of my life, one where I wasn't defined by being Jessica's less impressive sister. Chicago embraced me like a long-lost friend. The city's energy matched my newfound independence, and I threw myself into building my career at Horizon Design Studio. My tiny studio apartment in Wicker Park became my sanctuary, decorated with my own artwork and finds from local flea markets. For the first time, I was creating a space that was entirely mine. Angela quickly became more than a boss. She was the mentor I'd always craved. She pushed me to develop my skills while recognizing my unique creative perspective. Within 6 months, I was leading my own small projects, and clients were specifically requesting Sarah's distinctive style. "You've exceeded every expectation," Angela told me during my first performance review. "Your work ethic is extraordinary, and your design sensibility is refreshing. We're increasing your responsibilities and your salary." That validation from someone whose opinion I respected meant everything. I saved the written review in a special folder, reading it whenever I felt the old insecurities creeping back. I met Michael at a charity auction our firm was hosting for a local arts education program. He was tall, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled, working as an architect at a firm in the same building as mine. We struck up a conversation over the silent auction table, where we were both bidding on the same photograph. "You should take it," he said, stepping back from the bid sheet. "Something tells me you'd appreciate it more than I would." "How would you know that?" I asked, curious about his assessment. "The way you were looking at it," he replied, "like you were seeing beyond the surface to the intention behind it. That's rare." We ended up talking for hours that night, missing most of the actual auction. Michael asked for my number as we were leaving, and by the time I got home, there was already a text waiting. "Dinner tomorrow. I know a place that serves art on a plate." Our relationship developed with an ease I'd never experienced before. Michael listened when I talked, really listened, and remembered details about my likes and dislikes. He celebrated my work achievements with genuine enthusiasm and supported me through professional challenges. When I confided in him about my family dynamics, he didn't try to minimize my feelings or suggest I was overreacting. "That must have been incredibly painful," he said simply. "No child deserves to feel invisible in their own family." 4 months into dating, Michael invited me to his parents' anniversary celebration in Milwaukee. I was nervous about meeting his family, given my own family experiences. What I found was another revelation. The Andersons' home was warm and welcoming. Photos of Michael and his two sisters at various ages covered the walls in equal measure. During dinner, his parents asked questions of all three siblings and their partners, showing genuine interest in everyone's lives. When Michael mentioned one of my recent design awards, his mother immediately asked to see my portfolio. "This is extraordinary work, Sarah," she said slowly, paging through the designs on my tablet. "You have such a gift for communicating emotion through visual elements." That weekend gave me a glimpse of what family could be: supportive, balanced, loving, without conditions or comparisons. Meanwhile, Jessica's seemingly perfect marriage was showing cracks. 6 months after her lavish wedding, which I attended dutifully, though I felt like an afterthought in the proceedings, rumors of problems began circulating. During one of our infrequent phone calls, my mother mentioned that Jessica and her husband were going through a rough patch. Despite the distance I'd created, I still called my parents monthly, trying to maintain some semblance of a relationship. These calls followed a predictable pattern: brief questions about my life, followed by lengthy updates about Jessica. "Your promotion sounds nice, dear," my mother said during one such call, after I'd shared news about becoming a senior designer. "Did I tell you Jessica is being considered for a position with an international consulting firm? It would be such a prestigious role." Michael witnessed one of these calls while visiting my apartment. After I hung up, he looked troubled. "Do they always dismiss your accomplishments like that?" he asked. "That was actually one of our better conversations," I admitted. He shook his head. "Sarah, that's not okay. You deserve parents who celebrate your success." The following Thanksgiving, Michael and I flew to Philadelphia. It would be his first time meeting my parents, and despite my warnings, I don't think he was fully prepared for the reality. We arrived to find my childhood home transformed into a shrine to Jessica's accomplishments. New frame certificates joined the collection on the walls, and conversation revolved almost exclusively around her latest career developments. During dinner, when Michael attempted to share the news about my major client project that had been featured in a design magazine, my father nodded distractedly before turning to Jessica. "Did you tell Sarah about your potential promotion? They're creating a special position just for you." I watched Michael's expression shift from disbelief to quiet anger. Later that night in the guest room, my old basement space had been fully converted to a home gym years earlier. He held me close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I thought you might have been exaggerating a little, but if anything, you understated the situation." Our relationship deepened over the following months. Michael's steadfast support helped heal wounds I hadn't realized were still so raw. When he proposed a year and a half after we met on a rooftop garden overlooking the Chicago skyline, I felt ready to begin building our own family, one based on mutual respect and genuine love. "Sarah Miller," he said down on one knee, with a vintage sapphire ring in hand. "You are the most extraordinary person I've ever known. Your strength, your creativity, your kind heart. I fall more in love with you every day. Will you marry me?" For once in my life, I felt completely seen and valued for exactly who I was. "Yes," I answered through happy tears. "Absolutely yes." The ring on my finger symbolized more than just our engagement. It represented a future where I would be someone's first choice, someone's priority. That night, as we celebrated with champagne, I couldn't help thinking how different this felt from my sister's elaborate engagement announcement, which had been orchestrated primarily for show. Of course, when I called my parents with the news, their first question was whether we'd be waiting until after Jessica's divorce was finalized, to avoid overshadowing her difficult time. Her perfect marriage had lasted less than 2 years, ending when her husband accepted a position overseas that she refused to consider. "Michael and I will be planning our wedding for next fall," I said firmly. "We've already started looking at venues." For once, I wasn't going to adjust my life around Jessica's timeline. This was my moment, and I intended to embrace it fully. Our engagement ushered in a beautiful period of planning and dreaming, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter in my family's pattern of favoritism. Initially, my parents seemed supportive, offering a modest financial contribution toward the wedding and expressing interest in our plans. This brief honeymoon phase lasted approximately 2 weeks. "Sarah, have you thought about postponing the wedding?" my mother asked during a phone call in January. "Jessica's divorce will be finalized around the same time as your planned date. It might be difficult for her emotionally to attend another wedding so soon." Mom, Michael and I have already put deposits down on our venue for October 15th, I explained. We can't change it now. Well, perhaps you could make it a very small ceremony then. Just immediate family. It would be easier for Jessica that way. I gripped the phone tightly. Our wedding will be the size we want it to be. Jessica is welcome to attend or not, depending on how she feels. My father called the next day. Your mother tells me you're being uncooperative about the wedding plans. Sarah, you need to consider your sister's feelings during this difficult time. Dad, I've spent my entire life considering Jessica's feelings above my own. This is my wedding day. It's the one day that should be about Michael and me. Don't be dramatic, he scoffed. Nobody's asking you to cancel. Just be reasonable and scale back. The conversation ended with him suggesting they might need to reconsider their financial contribution if I wasn't willing to be flexible. Michael found me crying afterward. When I explained the situation, he didn't hesitate. We don't need their money. We'll pay for the wedding ourselves. This is our day, and we're going to celebrate it exactly how we want to. His unwavering support gave me strength. We returned my parents' check with a polite note explaining that we'd decided to handle the expenses ourselves to avoid any complications. The situation deteriorated further when Jessica moved back into my parents' home following her divorce. Suddenly, every wedding discussion included her opinions, as my mother began putting her on speakerphone during our conversations. Jessica thinks you should reconsider your color scheme, my mother informed me during what was supposed to be a private call about bridesmaid dresses. Navy blue reminds her of her ex-husband's family, and it might be triggering. Mom, I didn't realize Jessica was listening in. This was supposed to be a conversation between us. Don't be selfish, Sarah. Your sister is going through a difficult time and wants to feel included. The boundary violations continued. Jessica showed up uninvited to my first dress fitting, brought along by my mother, who claimed she needed a day out to cheer her up. When I expressed my disappointment at not being consulted first, I was painted as the villain. After everything she's been through, you can't even share your special moments with her. She shared everything with you during her wedding planning, my mother scolded. The historical revision was stunning. Jessica had barely included me in her wedding preparations, and I'd been relegated to a bridesmaid position that felt more like an afterthought than an honor. Michael's parents, witnessing this dysfunction, stepped in with unprecedented support. They hosted a beautiful engagement party for us in Milwaukee, helped us research vendors, and most importantly, provided emotional reinforcement when my family's behavior threatened to overshadow our joy. This is your celebration, Michael's mother assured me over lunch one weekend. You deserve to have boundaries respected. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. 6 months before the wedding, the situation reached a breaking point. Jessica began showing up uninvited to our vendor meetings in Chicago, having been informed of the schedule by my mother. She arrived at our cake tasting with a list of suggestions and attempted to redirect the conversation toward flavors she preferred. After she left, the baker gave me a sympathetic look. Family can be complicated during wedding planning. Just remember, it's your day, not theirs. That evening, Michael and I had a serious conversation about how to handle the wedding day itself. We both recognized that without a plan, my family would likely find ways to center Jessica's needs over our celebration. What if we create a structured schedule that doesn't leave room for last-minute changes? Michael suggested. And we could assign my brother to run interference if necessary. Together, we crafted a careful strategy. We hired a wedding coordinator who understood our concerns and agreed to be the gatekeeper for any family requests or changes. We created a detailed timeline that would be shared only with essential vendors in the wedding party. And most importantly, we prepared ourselves emotionally for potential disruptions. The final straw came during my last dress fitting 3 weeks before the wedding. My mother had promised to come alone, as this was traditionally a special moment between mother and daughter. I arrived at the bridal salon to find both my mother and Jessica waiting, with Jessica wearing white, a color she had pointedly avoided until then. Surprise, my mother said. Jessica wanted to share this special moment with you. As the seamstress helped me into my gown, I caught Jessica eyeing herself in the mirror, smoothing the white dress she had chosen for this specific occasion. My mother beamed at her, then turned to me with a critical eye. The dress is nice, Sarah, but don't you think the neckline is a bit much? Jessica's wedding gown was so elegantly modest. In that moment, something crystallized within me. This pattern would never end unless I took decisive action. My wedding day would be the line in the sand. I would no longer accept being the afterthought in my own life story. "The dress is perfect," I said firmly, "and it's exactly what I want for my wedding day." On the drive back to Chicago, I called Michael. "We need to adjust our wedding day plan," I told him. "I'm done trying to accommodate their behavior." He listened as I outlined a new approach, one that would allow us to take back control of our celebration, while sending a clear message. "Are you sure?" he asked when I finished. "This is a big statement." "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. "It's time they understand what they've been doing all these years." The pieces of our sweet revenge began falling into place. October 15th dawned clear and crisp, a perfect fall day for a wedding. I woke early in our hotel suite surrounded by my closest friends, who would be my bridesmaids. Katie, still my best friend from college, was my maid of honor. Michael's sister Emily and 3 friends from work completed the bridal party. We had reserved the hotel's bridal preparation room from 8 a.m. until the 2 p.m. ceremony. My mother knew this schedule, as did all the bridesmaids. The hairstylist and makeup artist arrived promptly, and the joyful preparations began. At 9:30, there was a knock on the door. Emily opened it to find my mother and Jessica standing there, both with full hair and makeup already done. "We thought we'd surprise Sarah and get ready together," my mother announced, stepping into the room uninvited. Jessica followed, carrying a garment bag containing her outfit for the day, a pale blush gown that bordered dangerously close to white. Katie caught my eye, recognizing the situation from our many conversations. We had prepared for this possibility. She smoothly intervened. "Mrs. Miller, what a surprise," she said, guiding them to a small seating area away from my makeup station. "Sarah is in the middle of her makeup application right now. It's a detailed process and requires her concentration. Perhaps you could come back in an hour." My mother looked affronted. "I'm the mother of the bride. Surely I should be part of the preparation." "Of course," Katie agreed pleasantly. "We have you scheduled for 11:30. The makeup artist has a specific timeline to ensure everyone is ready for photos. Would you like me to text you when it's your time slot?" The structured response, delivered with professional courtesy, left little room for argument. My mother reluctantly agreed to return later, though her disapproving glance in my direction spoke volumes. When they left, I exhaled slowly. "Thank you," I said to Katie. "That was perfect." "Just following the plan," she replied with a wink. "This is your day, Sarah. No one gets to hijack it." At 11, the photographer arrived to capture getting ready moments. By then, I was fully made up, my hair arranged in loose curls with small white flowers woven through. The atmosphere was relaxed and joyful, exactly what I had dreamed of for this day. My mother and Jessica returned precisely at 11:30. Jessica immediately positioned herself next to me, as the photographer was working, attempting to insert herself into every shot. The photographer, briefed in advance, smoothly redirected. "Let's get some of just the bride and her mother now," she suggested, gently moving Jessica aside. "Then we'll do bride with bridesmaids." "But I'm her sister," Jessica protested. "Surely I should be in these special photos." "We have a separate session planned for family portraits before the ceremony," the photographer explained. "Right now we're focusing on the bridal party." Jessica wasn't included in the bridal party, a decision I'd made deliberately after years of being relegated to the background in her life events. She had expected an automatic bridesmaid position and had been visibly shocked when I informed her she would be seated with our parents as a guest. The carefully orchestrated morning continued according to plan. When it came time to get into my dress, I asked only Katie and Emily to help me. My mother's hurt expression was palpable, but I remained firm. "Mom, I'd like these moments with my bridesmaids," I said gently but firmly. "We'll have our photos together once I'm ready." The controlled environment of the preparation room had been the easier part. The real test would come at the ceremony and reception. We arrived at the Botanical Garden venue at 1:30. Michael and I had chosen to do a first look privately before the ceremony, a beautiful moment captured on camera without family interruptions. As we stood together in the rose garden, his eyes filling with tears at the sight of me in my wedding dress, I felt a profound sense of rightness. "You are breathtaking," he whispered, taking my hands in his, "and so incredibly strong. I'm proud to be marrying you today." The ceremony was scheduled for 2, with guests already being seated by the garden's central fountain. My father was waiting to walk me down the aisle, a tradition I had decided to honor despite our complicated relationship. "You look nice," he said when he saw me, his standard underwhelming response to any of my achievements. "Jessica helped with your veil arrangement. I assume it looks like the one she wore." I smiled, refusing to let the comparison diminish my joy. "Actually, Emily designed it specially for me. It's completely original." The seating arrangement for the ceremony was the first element of our planned statement. Traditionally, the immediate family of the bride and groom sit in the front row. We had adjusted this, placing Michael's parents in the first row on the bride's side with my grandmother beside them. My parents and Jessica were seated in the second row, still honored guests, but visibly not in the primary position of importance. When my father noticed the arrangement as we prepared to walk down the aisle, he frowned. "There must be some mistake with the seating," he muttered. "No mistake," I replied calmly. "That's exactly where you're meant to be." The look of confusion on his face was the first small satisfaction of the day. The ceremony itself was beautiful and deeply personal. Michael and I had written our own vows, and I spoke of finding true acceptance and unconditional love after years of feeling invisible. Many guests wiped away tears, recognizing the authenticity behind my words. After the minister pronounced us husband and wife, we walked back down the aisle together, passing my parents' row. The hurt and confusion on their faces registered briefly, but I kept walking, focused on the joyful future ahead, rather than the painful past behind. The reception was held in the garden's glass-enclosed pavilion. As guests found their assigned tables, another element of our plan unfolded. The head table included Michael and me, his parents, my grandmother, and our wedding party. My parents and Jessica were seated at a regular guest table positioned not centrally, but toward the side of the room. The traditional parent dances were modified as well. I danced with Michael's father after Michael danced with his mother. When the DJ announced this departure from tradition, murmurs rippled through the crowd, but I maintained my composure, grateful for Mr. Anderson stepping in where my own father had emotionally abandoned me so many times. The most powerful moment came during the speeches. After Katie's touching maid of honor speech and Michael's brother's humorous best man toast, I took the microphone myself, something not typically done by the bride. "Michael and I want to thank everyone for coming today," I began, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "Marriage is about creating a new family built on love, respect, and genuine appreciation for each other's unique qualities. Today marks not just our union, but my personal journey from invisibility to being truly seen." I gestured to a digital display screen where a slideshow began playing. "I'd like to recognize the people who have truly supported me throughout my life." The slides showed photographs of my grandmother teaching me to paint as a child, Mrs. Garcia, at my high school art show, the Thompsons, welcoming me into their family celebrations, Angela mentoring me at work, and Michael standing proudly beside me at my design award ceremony. "These are the people who saw my worth when others couldn't," I continued, "who celebrated my achievements without comparison or condition, who taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about who makes space for you to be your authentic self." The room was completely silent, as the implications of who wasn't featured in the tribute became clear. My parents sat frozen, Jessica beside them, with a stunned expression. "Today I stand before you whole and loved, not despite my past, but because I chose to create a different future. Michael and I pledge to build a home where everyone is valued for exactly who they are, where no one lives in anyone else's shadow." As I finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Many guests had tears in their eyes, including Michael's parents, who understood exactly what this moment meant for me. My grandmother caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small, proud nod. The remainder of the reception continued with joyful dancing and celebration. My parents and Jessica left early, departing without a personal goodbye. Their absence felt like a weight lifted rather than a loss. Later that night, as Michael and I danced our final dance in the nearly empty pavilion, he held me close. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. "Free," I answered truthfully. "For the first time in my life, completely free." Michael and I left for our honeymoon the next morning, 2 blissful weeks in Portugal, far from family drama and painful memories. I had turned off my phone notifications for any messages from my parents or Jessica, allowing myself to fully immerse in the joy of our new beginning. The coastal towns, with their colorful buildings and rich history, provided the perfect backdrop for healing. Each day walking hand in hand with Michael along cobblestone streets, or watching breathtaking sunsets over the Atlantic, I felt layers of hurt slowly melting away. We talked about our future, our hopes for the family we might build together, and the values that would guide our home. I want any child of ours to feel unconditionally loved, I told Michael one evening as we sat on our hotel balcony, to know they're valued for exactly who they are, not for how they compare to anyone else. They will, he promised. We'll break that cycle completely. When we returned to Chicago, reality was waiting in my email inbox. Among the congratulatory messages and work updates was an unexpected message from Jessica. The subject line read simply, "I understand now." With some trepidation, I opened it. "Sarah, I've spent the 2 weeks since your wedding doing a lot of thinking. For the first time, I saw our family dynamic from your perspective, and I'm deeply ashamed of my role in it. I always knew Mom and Dad favored me, but I convinced myself that you were fine with it, or that you didn't notice. Your wedding made it impossible to maintain that fiction. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm starting therapy to understand why I accepted and perpetuated this harmful pattern. What happened to you was wrong, and I'm sorry for every time I took advantage of the preferential treatment instead of standing up for you. If you're ever willing to talk, I'd like to try to build a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect. But I understand if that's not possible. Congratulations on your marriage. Michael seems like an extraordinary person who truly sees your worth. You deserve that happiness. Jessica." The email left me speechless. Of all the reactions I'd anticipated, this level of self-awareness from Jessica hadn't been among them. I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process my feelings. My parents' reaction was predictably different. A terse email from my father arrived the same day. "Your behavior at the wedding was embarrassing and hurtful. Your mother is devastated by your public rejection of your family. When you're ready to apologize, we'll be waiting." There was no acknowledgement of the decades of favoritism, no recognition of why I might have felt driven to make such a statement, just the familiar expectation that I would accommodate their feelings while disregarding my own. I forwarded both emails to Dr. Matthews, my therapist from college, with whom I'd maintained contact. We scheduled a video session to discuss how to navigate this new chapter. "The contrasting responses are revealing," she observed during our call. "Jessica seems to be experiencing genuine insight, while your parents are still entrenched in their established narrative. How do you want to proceed with each relationship?" It was a profound question that required careful consideration. After discussion with both Dr. Matthews and Michael, I decided to send Jessica a brief reply acknowledging her email and expressing cautious openness to conversation at some point in the future. To my parents, I sent nothing. 3 months passed without contact. Michael and I settled into married life, busy with work and creating our home together. We'd purchased a small house in a northern Chicago neighborhood with a spare bedroom I was converting into an art studio. On weekends, we explored the city or drove to Milwaukee to visit his family. Life felt balanced and joyful. Then my grandmother called. "Your mother had a minor surgery last week," she informed me. "Nothing serious, but perhaps you might send a card." Despite everything, I did care about my parents' well-being. I sent a tasteful get well card with a neutral message. 2 days later, my father called. "Your mother would like to see you," he said without preamble. "She's been doing some thinking since the surgery." The meeting was set for the following Saturday at my grandmother's house, neutral territory. Michael offered to come with me, but I decided to go alone. This was a conversation I needed to have on my own terms. My mother looked smaller somehow, sitting in my grandmother's living room. The surgery had taken a physical toll, but there was something else, a diminishment of the authority she had always projected. "Sarah," she said softly when I entered. "Thank you for coming." We exchanged awkward pleasantries about my job, the house, Michael's work. Finally, my mother sighed. "Jessica tells me she's been seeing a therapist," she said, as though this were slightly scandalous. She says we've been unfair to you throughout your life. I waited, not rushing to fill the uncomfortable silence. I don't think we were that bad, she continued defensively. We gave you a good home education opportunities. But never equal treatment, I responded evenly. Never the same attention or resources or emotional support that Jessica received. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't mean to hurt you. Intention doesn't erase impact, I said, repeating a phrase Dr. Matthews had taught me. Whether you meant to or not, the message I received my entire life was that I mattered less. The conversation continued for over an hour. There were moments of genuine connection and moments of frustrating denial. My mother could acknowledge specific incidents of favoritism, but struggled to see the overall pattern. She wanted reconciliation, but on terms that required minimal change from her. Give her time, my grandmother counseled as she walked me to my car afterward. This is a start, not an end point. Over the following months, tentative bridges were built. My father remained largely resistant, still unable to see his role in the family dysfunction. During one particularly tense phone call, he grudgingly admitted, "Maybe we did focus on Jessica's achievements a bit more, but she was achieving bigger things." "That's exactly the problem, Dad," I replied. "You measured our worth by external markers instead of loving us equally for who we are." He had no response to that. Jessica's journey proved more surprising. She continued therapy, even joining a support group for adult children from dysfunctional families. When we finally met for coffee 6 months after the wedding, she was noticeably different, more reflective, less competitive. "I've been looking back at our childhood photos," she said, stirring her latte. "There's this birthday party of mine when I turned 16. You're in the background of one picture just watching everyone celebrate me. The look on your face, it haunts me now. You were only 6, but you already knew you weren't equal." Her recognition of these dynamics helped heal wounds I hadn't realized were still so raw. We began building a different kind of relationship, not close yet, but honest in a way we'd never been before. The first family gathering after the wedding was Thanksgiving at my grandmother's house. Michael and I attended with clear boundaries and an exit strategy if needed. To everyone's surprise, the day passed without major incidents. My parents made awkward but genuine attempts to ask about my work projects. Jessica deliberately stepped back, making space for me in conversations. It wasn't perfect, but it was movement in the right direction. A year after our wedding, Michael and I shared news that would test the family's progress. We were expecting a baby. My mother's immediate response was telling. "That's wonderful," she said, then hesitated before asking, "Would it be all right if I helped plan the baby shower? I understand if you'd prefer someone else to do it." The acknowledgement of my boundaries and autonomy represented significant growth. We agreed that she could co-host with Michael's mother, a collaboration that proved both challenging and healing for her. During my pregnancy, I spent time reflecting on the kind of parent I wanted to be. The fear of repeating dysfunctional patterns was real, but so was my determination to create something different. "You're already breaking the cycle," Dr. Matthews assured me during a session. "Awareness is the first and most crucial step." As my due date approached, I finished painting a mural in the nursery, a woodland scene with a mother deer and her fawn standing tall in a sunlit clearing. It represented everything I hoped to give my child: protection, guidance, and the space to grow into their authentic self. The day our daughter Lily was born, I experienced love in its purest, most unconditional form. Holding her small body against mine, I made a silent promise that she would never question her worth or feel invisible within her own family. My parents and Jessica came to meet Lily a week after we brought her home. Watching my mother hold her granddaughter with tears in her eyes, I saw a glimmer of hope for a different future. "She's perfect, Sarah," my mother whispered gently, touching Lily's tiny hand. "Just like you were." It was perhaps the first time she had ever seen me as perfect, exactly as I was. The healing wasn't complete. It might never be, but in that moment, I felt the possibility of redemption. The greatest lesson I've learned through this journey is that your value isn't determined by others' ability to see it. For years, I believed my worth was diminished by my parents' inability to recognize it. Now I understand that their limitations never defined me. They only defined the narrowness of their vision. Breaking free from the golden child shadow wasn't about revenge, although that's what I thought I wanted on my wedding day. It was about reclaiming my narrative and creating a life where I was the protagonist, not a secondary character. As I look at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib, I know that the cycle of favoritism ends with me. She will grow up in a home where she is celebrated for her unique qualities, never compared to others, or measured against impossible standards. She will know without question that she is enough exactly as she is. Has your family ever made you feel invisible or less than? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be seen. Thank you for listening to my journey from shadow to light. And remember that sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well on your own terms.